There's Mutable Cross. Welcome back, everyone. Rose, can you send me a request? How was it?
It was great. Felt really good. And yeah, had a lot of liquids.
I hear you. It's the morning. I drink so much tea in the morning.
Yeah, well, I drink like a pint of hot lemon water and then a pint of
Mm.
coffee.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Should we do
Balance.
a cleansing ritual tonight? Somebody asked. I mean, if there's some shit you really need to let go, but it's gonna be like the thing with it's not like a normal full moon, so this story is gonna stretch out for the
Right.
next 18 months. So I I would imagine you're getting some information, but I don't know that it'll come fully to fruition till the end of this larger cycle.
I would say, though, that eclipse times in general, um, because there's a shift in like a evolutionary direction, or there's an opportunity at eclipse times, I think, to recognize where we might be going in directions, or embodying certain ways of being that we want to let go of. Like it is, I think eclipse times are great for cleansing and great
Mm-hmm.
for bathing and meditating. And one thing that really resonates for me that I've heard a lot of astrologers say is that these are times to really pay attention to what is occurring in your life and how you want to move with these experiences and with these occurrences, and kind of feel into like how can you make the meaning that's meaningful for you out of what's happening right now. But it's not a time necessarily to try and like manifest and be like, this is the thing that I want, because there's so much that's changing. And so it is a really good time to let go of the past and to let go of what you, it's like, okay, this isn't serving me. This isn't serving
Yeah.
me. This isn't serving me. Oh, like I'm noticing these things are happening right now. How can I tune in with a potential opportunity in this or healing in this?
Yeah.
And then open space for the future, because we don't know what the future is going to be.
Yeah. Somebody asked, is it normal to get sick or is that a symptom of something else? We are in a global pandemic. It's also flu season. But I would also say that I often experience eclipses as very draining physically. I will often feel pretty fatigued and just like need to like spend a lot of time in the bath or in bed if, capitalism affords you that luxury, right? But go easy on yourself, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. I think someone had a question about Venus back
In the third
here.
decan, yeah.
Yeah. Can you break down Moon in the third decan with Venus in Capricorn? Rose, you want to go for it?
If you're saying that your moon is also in the third decan of Capricorn, I think that's what you're saying. But if you're not saying that,
Or the
I think
full moon,
you're
maybe?
asking about the full moon.
Yeah.
Can you confirm? If you're talking about the full moon in the third decan with Venus and Capricorn, what we are talking about is each sign can be further divided into three decans, each sun season, right? Um, or actually, no, just each sign, right? Because we have 30 degrees in a sign, and so every 10 degrees gets its own decan. So the first decan will be, for instance, with Taurus, the first decan is Taurus. The second decan will then be whatever is next in the triplicity, right, in the earth elements. So for Taurus, that's Virgo. And then the third decan, which is the last 10 degrees, will be in the Capricorn, right? And so because Venus has just entered its retrograde shadow and will be in the sign of Capricorn for the next 4 months-ish, right? 3.5. And so that makes this eclipse falling in the Capricorn decan also resonate with what's happening in Venus, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's further emphasized because Venus is the ruling planet of Taurus, right? So we're already, when something's happening in Taurus, we're looking to what Venus is doing for clues. And then because this eclipse happened in the last decan, which is a Capricorn decan, and because Venus is in Capricorn, it just feels further resonant and connected. I don't know if that makes sense or if that was just too much.
Yeah, so the multiplicities or the triplicities, Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn, um, are what Rose was referring to. And so within any sign, there's a system of governance that combines the ruler of the sign. So if we're thinking about Taurus, the ruler is Venus. And then within the decans, so the three parts of the sign, the first decan of Taurus will be Venus ruled. So Venus, Venus, Taurus, Taurus. It's like, this is where it's like, what can I build? What can I cultivate? Bring it all to me. Like, let's slow down. Let's enjoy this. Yeah. And then the second decan is associated with Virgo. So it's Mercury ruled. And Mercury's influence in the second decan of Capricorn, of Taurus, brings a kind of mental calculation into that area of Taurus. And I think that there's a capacity within that, like, it's like the most fixed part of a fixed sign is the middle of the decan.
Yeah.
And Mercury is representative of intelligence. And I think like a Venus Mercury combo or Taurus Virgo kind of synthesis has to do with craft. Like, how do we build the thing that we're craving? Like, how do we apply ourselves to cultivating life? And then the third decan is associated with Capricorn. It's Saturn ruled. And the third decan of any earth sign is the place where whatever has come into form breaks down, like unforms and comes out of being, because that is the truth of life on earth, is that any form will mutate. And so Saturn in the third decan of Taurus, that influence is saying like there's a limit to what you can cultivate. And that's what we were talking about in the last live of like, you can't only inhale, like what doesn't die becomes cancerous. And in the Venus retrograde, Venus is stationing in the last decan of Capricorn. So again, a point in an earth sign where things are breaking down. It's stationing retrograde conjunct with Pluto, which is a symbol of death, transformation, and rebirth. And it's moving back to the degree point that it is at today or yesterday. So Venus has just started its retro shade, its retrograde shadow. So the full moon eclipse symbol and like energy, I think, is going to get carried through this Venus retrograde. They're working together because, as Rose said, Venus is the ruler of Taurus. And so Venus's placement today, as it's applying in conjunction with Pluto, it's moving into its shadow. December 19th, it's going to station retrograde. It's retrograde through the end of January. And this is a period of time when it's really good to use it for breaking things down. And so like deconstruction projects would be advised at this point, like where is there excess? Where are you trying to hold too much? Like, are you being greedy? Are you being stingy? Are you getting stuck in something that it would be better to like let it go or let it transform? And then in that too, like that process of remembering that any retrograde implies Venus is traveling back through the third and the second decan of Capricorn and kind of looking at, I think, questions of sustainability. And like that, like Capricorn's like, what's the long term, like where are we really trying to go? And do we have the things that we need? And are we being smart about this? Like, let's look at the problems ahead. Like doing things like that in our lives right now is really good. Like not to get hung up on fear and like get shut down and overwhelmed, but like, where are you trying to sustain things that aren't going to sustain you? Someone is about to launch a small side business in the next week or two. Is that not a good idea? You know, Rose, feel free to chime in, but I think like if you can think about this launch as a soft launch and
Yeah.
use Venus's retrograde as a period of time to really like research the structure of what it is that you're forming. And I would say like if you're going to be like constructing the monument of a business, a lot of the themes that we talked about in the last live, like what in your business is generative to life? Like, are you going to assume these like embodiments of business as they've been kind of like put out in like patriarchal capitalism, you know, as like something that's you're gonna be an owner and you're gonna like employ, and you know, it's like I doubt you are. I'm just I doubt
Yeah.
that's you, but it's like really thinking about how does your business become something that is life-giving, that is nourishing, that you know sustains you and can sustain like what you know what's the love, right? Like Venus is like where's the love?
For sure. Well, and also seeing how it fits into your life. Like, is it going to come, like, yeah, if you're seeing this as a trial or a soft launch, it's actually a great use of this energy because you're seeing, like, how will I have to shift my priorities? Where will my energies have to move away from? Will I still be able to take care of myself and my body if I am doing this? Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, so folks, this person that asked the question that they're actually going to use it to help people as domestic violence survivors. So one thing to think about too is like, especially with this idea of help, you know, with Venus, is that this would be a really good time to be in conversation with the survivors that you're working with, you know, and let something be like collaborative and emergent, which I'm sure that you're already thinking of this, you know, but it's like maybe the difference between charity and actual support, you know,
Yeah.
that we're not like, especially with Capricorn, you know, being kind of a domineering force, like how do we come into allyship and alignment with who and what we're trying to help in a way that is like really nourishing and supportive
Yes.
and not like assuming what the need is going to be.
Totally. Yeah. Before this, somebody asked about a Scorpio stellium.
Yeah, they put it again. Scorpio stellium in the first house, Mercury, Saturn, Pluto, Sun, and rising. Holy Scorpio. Taurus North Node. So they're also Scorpio South Node. A lot of
Yeah.
relationship issues with their partner. So you're having your nodal return coming up.
Yeah.
It's one thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to speak too much about or to your partner because I don't think we need to. I think what you need to look at is what price do you pay for the intensity that you crave? And what, like, how is how you want to be seen in relationship getting in the way of how you actually are? Does that make sense? Like, what is underneath the giving and what's underneath the connection there?
I guess, yeah, I would say like that Scorpio stellium that you have your South Node there as well if you're a Taurus North Node. And so you're moving into your nodal return. And the nodal return happens about every 18 to 20 years. So you might Google, like get on Google and you can just say like, when was the last time the North Node was in Taurus? And it'll bring you back to that year. I think it was like 2000 2000, 2001, 2002.
Yeah, because 2001 was the last time we had Gemini Sag, because, yeah.
Okay, so it's 2002. And that might bring up something interesting. The times that we get the nodal returns are often times when it's like, I feel like the universe comes in and gives you a little bit of a chiropractor adjustment. And it's like, what's your posture, you know, like how we stand and how we hold our bodies solidifies over time. Like I've been dealing with this, you know, for the last few years that I'm so much on the computer and on the screen that my body is starting to like assume this like
you said that and I was like
computer monkey shape, right? And so it's like, okay, like I'm getting into my midlife era. Like I really need to focus on my posture and like, now I sit on a ball and I'm like doing a lot of exercises to make sure that I'm going to grow and form in a direction that I'd prefer to. And I think that like when things are coming up in eclipses where it's like something is on the way out or there are problems that are being represented, it's showing you like here are some evolutionary weaknesses, right? And you need to attend to these for your path of growth.
Yeah.
And you have a north node in Taurus opposing your Scorpio stellium. And so I guess there's something that's coming up for me around like trust in life, like trust in your capacity to build generative relationships and lean into the composting energy that Scorpio represents. And where is there possessiveness, manipulation, power shit, insecurity, feelings of like, fear of death that are coming up for you or your partner within the dynamics. And can you transform them? It's like not all relationships will end. Like
Yeah,
that's the truth, like when we can kind of be in this like space of openness to dying, a lot of times that's where life can really come in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, and I mean, just in general, with the Scorpio stellium, with Pluto involved in the first house, there's going to be some control stuff, which there's also going to be with the Virgo stellium, right? And so,
Yep.
and so some of that is figuring out like, yeah, can you share power and how do you do that? And if you're building something that is not generative and doesn't feel good, then you either need to majorly shift your patterns of relating and connecting, or you might need to figure out a new way or a new person or group of people to connect with,
Right. Yeah. And how are you relating to yourself? Because I think when I've been in relational dynamics, and I was just talking with a friend about this yesterday, like when I've been in relational dynamics where I'm scared of losing the relationship or I'm scared of losing that person, I become really separate and distant from myself. Like I lose myself is actually the thing that's happening. And my therapist said the surest way to experience abandonment in a relationship is to abandon yourself. And it's like that's what happens to me when I feel freaked out about, or when I've had that experience in a relationship. It's like I completely lose myself and I'm like, I'll do whatever you want, do whatever you need, like and then it's like I'm not in me, I'm not in like my center, my power. Like I will survive beyond this relationship, and if it's on the way out, it's because that space needs to get opened up. I have to trust that.
Yeah, and that also is where Renee and I were talking earlier about the Dane Rudyard book, An Astrological Triptych, but one of the gifts of the spirit for Scorpio is of non-identification, and the idea that like you can be in this relationship as a container and you can like draw from it, but that you also like that's not all you are. The ability to like move between it and between yourself, does that make sense? Where it's like you can be in the relationship, but the relationship does not define you. You can be in those
Right. Oh, Rose's internet connection is a little shaky because she's out in the hinterlands. You froze for a second. We lost you, and like you can be in the relationship and also be in yourself.
That's all I said, actually. I stopped. I saw the spinning wheel, so I just stopped talking.
Okay. All right. This one person is asking about their yod. So a yod is a chart. It's an aspect pattern with two 150-degree or in conjunct aspects brought together by a sextile between the two. It's like a long, I forget the name of this kind of triangle, but it's like sextile, and then they're both pointing at
Is it scaling
an
or
in
something?
conjunct. Yeah. But so the eclipse is happening on the focal point or the apex of their yod. Do you think this means this eclipse season will be extra intense or all about my yod's themes?
I think it will be invoking your yod's themes for sure. But what you should know is if the eclipse is on the focal point, right, that means that it also is on the midpoint between the two sextiles. So that's actually, it forms what's called a tetradic yod, and that is actually really important information about integration. So for you, this might mean you finally understand a little bit more how to use the assets of the two legs of your yod to push forward, because you have this perspective that's illuminated.
Yeah. I don't know if this is your yod, but a lot of people have yods that are formed to the generational placements of Pluto and Neptune. And so the person that asked that, I don't know if the sextile part of your yod is Pluto and Libra, Neptune and Sag. If you were born like in the late 80s, I guess that would be.
Yeah.
But if that is the case, I think that looking into the like generational calling, you know, their generational aspect placements could be really interesting. And Chris Brennan on the Astrology podcast did a couple of episodes, I think, on generational placements. And then if you look back at Embodied Astrology's guest episode archives, I did a segment with Ramon Parrish, and we talked a bunch about especially Pluto and Libra as a generation. So you might want to be considering those generational placements, because it's like you can be supported by the collective right now, and you can also like find your own support by tuning into the collective as well.
Yeah. Somebody was asking about having a Sag stellium, their midheaven Saturn and Uranus, and that you've got Saturn supposed to be your ruling, but you feel your Libra sun contradicts it. Well, you should know that Saturn is actually really exalted in Libra, and I think that your procrastination is more about your Sag, midheaven, Uranus and Saturn, which actually I have as well, though I have a Pisces rising. And so Saturn and Sag is really about disciplining the mind and understanding that you only have so much time to pursue your interests. Your Libra sun can really get behind and on board once it feels a sense of duty or social responsibility around that. That's what I think. What do you think, Renee?
I'm gonna just second what you said. I mean, I feel like you have that chart placement, and
I do. And so it's like you're probably never going to be happy doing just one job. Having Uranus as one of the highest points in your chart will mean that you probably at least have a knack or a real interest in astrology.
And you got to be a freak.
And you
Be
have to be
a freak.
be a total freak. But yeah, the procrastination, yeah, some of it's a fear of success, but some of it's a fear of permanence and commitment, which I can understand that like Libras have that, have the like always a flirt, never a bride, whatever reputation.
Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Should I go in? Should I go out? Should I go in?
Yeah.
Should I go out? Yeah. Someone else asked about, they have their ascendant at 27 degrees Taurus, and they were wondering about that, having the eclipse on their ascendant today. I would say, does that mean you'll feel the eclipse really strongly? I would say that, yeah. I mean, over the course of the next couple of years until October of 2023, we're getting eclipses in Taurus and Scorpio. And so if you're using a whole sign chart and Taurus takes up your first house, then this next couple of years for you is all about self-relationship, evolutionary growth. And to have the eclipse on your ascendant, I would say definitely is a symbol of how are you changing and what needs to change for you. And I don't know if you were there for the last live that we did, or for the part where we were talking about Medusa and Algol. But if your ascendant is at 27 degrees Taurus, that means that your ascendant is conjunct with Algol, or with the demon's head. And like I would be curious for you, like how you are resonating with themes of like sacred rage. And if any of that is coming up, and like the need to claim power, claim personal power in a new way with the eclipse here, the need to like be done with certain kinds of bullshit in relationships, or in ways that you might be like overgiving or engaging in like unsustainable contracts in your relational sphere that people are like taking from you, and taking from you without like really valuing you. And do you, you know, is there a need for you right now to value yourself, and also to like get in touch with the part of you that is pissed, like, you know, or that needs to like say no or shield from something. That's what's coming up for me.
Yeah, it's like, where does how does resentment build from unchecked generosity, you know? Like, the point where giving isn't clean anymore.
Yeah.
I'm pissed. Good job. Somebody asked, how do I know what I'm all about? I would say I would start with getting a natal chart from, don't you have a free one on your website?
Yeah, you can go to my website and get a free chart. It's through like a third-party app, Astro Charts. And there's lots of, I really like astro.com, which is a website, and you can get an interpretation if you go to like the dynamic charts or the interpretive charts, where you can just click on your placements and you'll get their interpretations. What you won't get is the dynamics of how all these pieces work together. So if you really want to understand your chart, book Rose for a reading.
True. I'm taking new clients. Renee's
Rose
not.
is taking new clients. I'm not taking clients at this point, but Rose is, and she has openings. But I do also have like a subscriber member space where we do chart work every month and really work a lot on like interpreting our own placements.
Yeah.
Someone's Aquarius rising is in for the freak mode. Fuck yeah.
Yes. Good job.
Oh yeah, feminine betrayal. Yeah. So someone commented about Athena having betrayed Medusa. Yeah, I mean, I think that like, so when I was going back over that myth, a lot was coming up for me in that relationship between Athena and Medusa, because Athena and Medusa were part of the same like triple being of the goddess. Athena is the maiden, Medusa is the crone.
And Metis is the mother, right?
The mother, yeah. And so they got split apart by patriarchy. And basically Athena then is this warrior goddess. So we get this uplifting of virginal maidenhood and like the element of the feminine that promotes the masculine, like Athena casting this final vote that like
You mean white women? In America?
Or I mean, yeah, and like I guess for me, like over the last couple of years, just to kind of like circle back and say like, you know, I was talking before about, I feel like there is like this transformation that is happening. And I don't know about you, Rose, like I spent a lot of my life, first of all, being unconscious of what it means to be an embodiment of white femininity, like not on my radar. Like I'm like the daughter of a second wave feminist, and I'm like, men are the problem, right? And then like at a certain point it's like, oh no, like whiteness, this is a word, this is a new word for me. And then learning about like the role of white women in the oppression and violence against people of color, indigenous people and Black people, and the role of white women in the like colonization projects, specifically around religion and education. But also like digging into those lineages and remembering that Europe was also colonized, right? Like invading forces, you know, colonized like indigenous society in Europe as well, that like, you know, polytheist cosmologies, goddess oriented traditions. There were the crusades and the witch burnings, and within this kind of like metastasis of like this cancerous energy, right? Like what have, for me, like in the embodiment of white femininity, like what have I learned to do implicitly and subtly
Mm-hmm.
is to do this decapitation, right? Is to like cut off the part of me that is full of rage, that to
Yeah.
like cut off my sexuality, to be chaste, to be like, yeah, like I'm going to uphold patriarchy because this grants me some kind of safety or something like that.
Yeah, like you can come in, just close the door behind you, you know?
Right, right, right. And
Yeah.
then there's also this another interpretation of Athena's relationship with Medusa, where it's like actually Athena remembers,
Yeah.
and like it's like she carries Medusa's emblem on her shield, and like she becomes. And with Pallas Athene, like I don't know if you use that asteroid in chart readings, like I often think about like this is the place where the feminine has learned to survive within patriarchy and within like especially within religious patriarchy, that is such a degradation, demotion of the feminine.
Well, also before, like originally Metis conceived Athena parthenogenically. How do you say the thing where you do it by yourself? Parthenogenically?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
It's basically in the original mythology, Metis did not need any help
She
creating Athena.
arose from the primeval waters.
Yeah, exactly. And the idea then too was that as they move towards like worshiping Jupiter or whatever, that like he needed to then absorb the source of wisdom. So then he eats Metis, and then Pallas Athena comes out of his head after. Is it Hephaestus? He gets to actually bust open his head because his headache is so bad. Anyway, but again, this idea of like consuming and consolidating and bringing it in and then giving it a different alleged source, right?
Yeah.
Instead of allowing it to be.
Someone is asking about house systems. They would they have a question about my thoughts on why Placidus isn't recommended. I don't recommend Placidus not to be used. What do you think about house systems, Rose? What's your preference and idea about it?
I think that ultimately we're talking about archetypes and energies, and what's most important is to be consistent and find something that you like that works for you, right? We know that we can feel aspects when they're close. They don't have to be exact. The full moon looks cool for a couple days, right? We also know that if we're using tropical or Western astrology, it's not even tied to stars in their actual placements because of the precession season, right? I don't know why that's happening. Is that me?
That sound?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was hearing it too.
So yeah, for house systems, I think try a couple, and once you get one that you feel like is helping you connect to your own chart and connect to other people's, and that makes sense with the ways that you're feeling transits, go with that. Like I use Placidus, my mentor used Placidus. They were like, it doesn't matter, but use Placidus. But at this point, it resonates for me, and it seems to translate in my work with clients. But I think it's more about connecting to the energy and just getting consistent.
Yeah. I, as a Sagittarius South Node native, would say do them all. Like, I mean, you could. I also mostly use Placidus, but I play around with whole signs. I also play around with the whole houses system, which I've been liking a lot. And I think that the different systems are giving us different language for the same thing. And
Yeah.
so whether we're orienting towards constellations, such as in sidereal astrology, or in tropical astrology, what we're doing is orienting around the Earth's rotation around the sun every year. So the quarterly markings of the solstices and the equinoxes set up the zodiacal wheel in the tropical system. We're still locating ourselves in space.
Yeah.
And that's what astrologers do, is like we locate ourselves in time and place, in time and space. And then the house systems are gonna show you different suggestions for location. And the Placidus system will give you more of a representation of the actual sky. Whereas the whole sign or the whole house systems will divide the sky differently. And from my understanding is that Placidus kind of arose with psychological astrology. And so I think Placidus is really interesting to like get into the psyche and the psychology of a person, and like whole sign and whole houses can be really good for prediction and like timing in a different way.
Yeah, I feel like whole sign and whole houses like gives you more of a rhythmic feeling of like this happens and then this happens and then, you know what I mean? Whereas Placidus tries to take into account also just like what it feels like in the quality of light where you are, right? That like being born very far north, deep in the winter is going to feel differently than being born close to the equator in the middle of summer, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, try and figure it out. The questions aren't coming up anymore on my screen, so you're gonna have to read them.
Okay, well, one person asked about could we speak to this eclipse cycle for Scorpio rising and the North Node? So in the North, I don't know if you're saying that your North Node is in Scorpio or that I don't totally understand what that question is about, but we did talk about nodal returns a little while ago, so maybe check the recording there, clarify the question. And then someone else asked, I think what they're asking about is a Pluto moon conjunction in Scorpio. And do you find that people reinvent themselves every few years? Like a Scorpio moon Pluto conjunction, Rose? Like, what do you think about that?
I mean, we're talking about like the fastest moving object and the slowest moving object, and those being together. So there's already that, right? I would imagine that your emotional landscape and shifts probably pretty rapidly, right? And also perhaps, yeah, if the moon is your body, and then that's partly there too. Yeah, I could see you reinventing yourself, but certainly there is like this cycle of shifting relationship to your emotions and to your ideas of safety and security and what you need to feel held and feel okay, right?
Yeah, I have Pluto in Libra, but it's on my IC, so the deepest part of the chart, which in some ways could get associated to the moon. And like I don't know, one thing that I was thinking about was like being a person that's here for transformation, like as a very Plutonian person, like a Pluto literally conjunct the root of my chart. I feel like my life has constantly thrust me into situations that are extremely intense and like abuse and death and mental illness, like psychological fucked upness. But I've also been given a lot of tools and opportunities to work with shadow and to like transform energy. And I found my way into a line of work that's all about doing transformational work. And I'm constantly working on myself. And it's like I'm the type of person that it's like the shit is coming down the tube, and I'm like, how am I gonna compost it? It's like this kind of like readiness for intensity, which sometimes is not, it's like not functional, because I'm like everything, what's the meaning, like what do I want to do, like. So I wonder if that resonates for you at all with that moon Pluto conjunction and what Rose said before to that person with the Scorpio stellium. How did you say it? Like your addiction to intensity, what did you say?
Oh, I mean, what do you gain and what do you lose from that? Like there is this need for that, but it's also because it's the moon, which is already constantly and consistently changing, right? And Pluto, that's about big transformation. Like what you need on Tuesday might be very different from what you need on Friday, and being able to like accept that and accept like the uglier impulses too, right? And know that everything is transitory, even though some things feel very permanent, right? Like Pluto takes a long ass time to move, but it still does.
Yeah. And also I was doing some astronomy research the other day, and I was just tickled to hear this thing about Pluto, which is that space scientists are like theorizing that underneath Pluto's ice are these like vast oceans, the primeval
Yep.
waters. And then I got into this
Yeah.
whole thing where I was like, in 3.5 billion years, like when our sun expands into supernova or whatever, like red giant, will the heat get far enough that it can start to melt those waters on Pluto? And is that like new life coming up?
Whoa. Yeah, props. You know what? I'm gonna sign on to that. I'm gonna just like drag this Gemini Sag and throw my belief on that wild idea.
There's hope. There's hope after all.
But there's always hope.
Someone else has a moon question. They're asking, their moon is at 26 Capricorn. They're curious about the Venus retrograde being expressed. So Venus will be stationing retrograde on their moon. And then they also, by the way, you also have Pluto transiting your moon this year. You're getting Pluto on the moon.
Yeah.
That's rough, potentially. I mean,
it's
Pluto.
I mean, it's rough, and it's also like you need it.
Yeah.
You need it. You're gonna have to let go of some shit. You're gonna be really thinking about, like, I would be focusing on, because you know Pluto can be grasping, it can be compulsive energy. So I think any of those emotional patterns that you already have, particularly ones that you learned from whoever like was a nurturing force or lack thereof when you were growing up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're really going to be looking at the way that that has shaped how you relate to other people, right? If Venus is stationing on your moon, you're looking at that emotional patterning and those early relationships and the way that you've carried them forward into how you shape your value systems, how you connect with other people, what you kind of invest in, what you think should and will last, and you're going to see what does and what doesn't. And I think hopefully you're also going to find ways to move towards vulnerability. I would imagine it's pretty tricky for you having a Cap moon late degree, but like you can't get help if you can't ask for it.
Right. Yeah, I think that moon in Capricorn, like third decan moon in Capricorn, could point to a person that received nurturing styles or had experiences in their life that was like, you have to like create your own systems of support, right? Like there's not necessarily a lot of support coming in, or the support that's coming in has very rigid expectations of what needs to be done in order to like continue to receive the support or something like that. And with Pluto coming onto the moon, and then with Venus's retrograde coming up, echoing a lot of what Rose said, like the moon wants to be relational, and Venus wants to be relational, and Pluto wants to help us break down what isn't serving evolutionary potential. And in Capricorn, and in late Capricorn, and in late stage capitalism, like what isn't serving your evolutionary potential when it comes to your survival patterns and survival mechanisms that would keep you feeling like you have to do everything on your own, or that would keep you orienting towards certain ideas of like achievement and success, being related to inherent value. Like how do you reclaim and reinvestigate value as a living process and a relational process?
And I think not for nothing, you might have some self-worth stuff coming up too. Like however you were treated when you were a small person who needed help, that does not inherently describe what you are worth, what you deserve, what you're worthy of. And maybe you had a great thing too. Like I'm not saying that you didn't. However, you get to have some say in how you are treated moving forward and in what relationships you want to bring with you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Someone else has a question about yods. They have two of them. What meaning do yods hold, or things I should be aware of? Rose, I'm going to let you start the answer because now I have to pee. All my cups of tea are catching up. Be right back.
Cool. Yeah, so I'm also a yod person. So we talked about it a little bit, that yods kind of describe Yod's just mathematically is a focal point, right? And then two legs that make that triangle. And one of the legs is one sign away from being opposite on like before it, and one of the legs on the other, right? So in general, a quincunx or an inconjunct, as it's called, which is one leg of the yod, implies discomfort, right? An opposition can be a challenging aspect, but at least you have a clear vision, you have full awareness of what's going on. The experience of a yod is you've got both the inclination, right? It's like having peripheral vision. You know that there is some shift that you need to make, and you don't quite know what it is. So there's that discomfort. And then the other side is the discomfort of actually knowing what it is and that you now have to take responsibility for doing that. So when you've got a yod, the focal planet is how the energy wants to be released, but you need to find a balance between kind of the two reactive legs on either side of it. But yeah, it's kind of you have to find a way to synthesize the energy of the two legs to move forward with that focal point. That's my feeling of having a yod. Like I have a yod with the focal point as my moon, and then I have Jupiter and my sun as the two legs of it. Or not Jupiter, sorry, Mars and my sun as the two legs of it. So I'm always trying to figure out, how do I assert myself in a way that like actually reflects who I am, so that I can like get the comfort that I need in relationships. Does that make sense?
You're looking at me like I know what.
I'm not actually looking at you. I'm looking at this person. But so the need, I would say, is kind of the point of the yod, and what you have to do is find a way to balance the two legs that don't really engage too well either. That's the thing, right? Like Virgo and Aquarius don't quite know what's going on with each other, though they both appreciate a system. Virgo and Aries, like Virgo just organize everything and Aries just smash it off the table to make room for what they're doing, right? So there's this way where you have to figure out the tension and realize that it can be resolved, but it's through using the two legs together.
Did you talk about also how when you have aspect patterns, that any time one of the points gets a transit, all of them get a transit? That's one thing just to keep in mind, like for folks that have like, and most people do have some kind of aspect patterns in their chart. And so the yod pattern, like any time one of those 3 points is receiving a transit, which will be 3 times throughout any given month with the moon, like your whole yod gets lit up. And so that need to like reconcile energy, or the like kind of weirdness that a yod can bring up, like that'll get stimulated repeatedly. And if you want to learn more about your chart, one of the best ways to do that is to track the lunar cycle and to just notice how you're feeling on the days when the moon is making an aspect to your natal placements.
Yeah, it's true. And you can also do Anne Orderly has like a method called the pinball method, but it's literally all she does is by degree number organize all of the placements in your chart, so then you can track even more steadily. That works better with something more slowly moving than the moon, right? Because the moon moves through 13 degrees in a day. But it is interesting then when you're looking at Mars or Mercury or Venus, when they're stimulating your chart, or even the sun, to start looking at like what areas of your life kind of get set off in what order.
Someone is asking that they've been hearing about how the fixed signs are having a super hard time right now. They're like, what's this about? Well, you're in luck because Rose and I are we both have like some fixed signs. And I think that we have, like, I have Leo Taurus placements, and you have Aquarius Scorpio placements.
I have Pluto and Scorpio, so it's generational, but it's in the party as well. So I've got Uranus Pluto oppositions, I've got Saturn Pluto squares, I've got
and I'm Leo rising, so I also have Leo Taurus, my ascendant descendant. And yeah, I mean, since last year in 2020, Saturn entered Aquarius.
Yep.
In 2018, Uranus entered Taurus.
Yeah.
And so for the last couple of years, like the fixed signs have been starting to get riled up. Like, wherever Taurus is in your chart, whatever house that's in, you're in some kind of 7-year process of growth and change. So from 2018 through 2025, Uranus moving through that part of your life is basically giving an opportunity to like reinvent something. And in the process of reinvention, there are potentials for freedom. Like Uranus as an energy is kind of wanting to assist us in experiencing what we feel as like our life force and the like potentiality of our life force. But in order to feel that, sometimes things need to break down that have been built in such a way that they're constrictive. So that could be things that we built ourselves or things that were built around us, you know, but Uranus transits can definitely include some chaos because there is a need to reshape. And then when Saturn comes into Aquarius in 2020, it's coming into the sign of its domicile, its rulership, but also the sign of Uranus's modern rulership. And so there's definitely this, I think, this feeling of like, how do we become a new shape? And for the fixed signs, working with Uranus and Saturn over the last year as they've been squaring each other. And by the way, we're coming up to the third and final square in December. There have been 3 in 2021, January, June, or February, June, and December. Like the whole fixed cross is basically getting, I mean, I've used this metaphor already, but like a chiropractic adjustment. It's like, like what's out of place, what needs to get into a different alignment. And like getting a chiropractor adjustment can hurt and it can be really terrifying, especially when they crack your neck, you know, and it's like, you have to like soften and trust and be like, okay, like if there's a point of pain, it's showing me where there's a pattern that has been pulling me into some way of being that is creating pain, that is creating constriction. And now I need to do the work of letting myself receive the adjustment, but also incorporating the exercises and the practices so that I can sustain this adjustment, so that I can move into the future of my life in this like posture that is going to be more liberated. Potentially. And then now it's Scorpio season, and over the summer in Leo season, you know, these other places in the fixed cross were getting really activated with Sun, Mercury, Mars moving through them, and then stimulating that Saturn Uranus square. So I don't know, as a Leo, like Leo season fucking sucked for me, and I felt like I'm Leo rising too, so I've had Saturn coming into my 7th house and opposing my Sun, and Leo season was just this huge kind of lesson around, for me, social anxiety and like like this kind of feeling of a Leo embodiment of like really wanting to be liked, actually, and like what happens to me when I kind of come out of my own center, like lose myself in order to try and please someone or get approval or something like that. And it was like, slap, like, don't do that. And the last few months have been like a lot of like readjusting. That was like the chiropractic adjustment. And in Scorpio season so far, I'm really feeling the transformation that has occurred, like because I took the last few months to feel. There was one particular situation that happened for me in August that was so painful, and you know, where I recognized like I was bringing harm into a situation by being outside of myself, but that there was also like I felt a lot of pain in myself because of like these relational dynamics, and that, you know, it's like the choice is there for me to either push it away and be like, fuck those people, whatever, like the, you know, this kind of like, I'm going to push that adjustment away and not let it change me. And then, or the option is to like really take it in and be like, whoa, that really hurt. That felt like so intense. Like, what do I need to learn? Like, what do I need to pay attention to? And It's personal. How are you feeling it, Rose, as like a fixed cross emissary?
I mean, you know, similarly, you know, the Saturn hasn't, I haven't had the pleasure of having Saturn creep up to my sun yet, but I know that's coming. But like I said before, Uranus is opposing Pluto, and it's across my second and eighth house. And so Uranus in the second and Pluto in the eighth. And so I feel like I've just been really needing to take more responsibility in relationship for like the patterning. And also like I've been having, you know, my partner broke her foot and her dog died on the same day a month ago, right? And so realizing like I feel like it is a kind of like, what's your greatest fear about losing, like living rurally and having moved across the country and kind of being all you have is each other, right? And like, what is that? So I just have felt like I felt the pressure, I felt the strain, and I just have like felt the need to like just me be more responsive and responsible towards my body and its needs, quite honestly, you know, and that like there's an idea of self that I want to be able to live up to, and then there's like the reality of like I am just a flesh incarnate, and that like yeah, there are very real limitations. So I've been feeling limitations, and I've been feeling like the surprise and upset and like the need to like reorient my relationship to like my resource and like my body and my time being a resource that is actually more important to tend to and to value than money for money's sake. Yeah.
Let's see, Rose, do you want to take one more question and we'll call it a wrap?
Yeah.
Let's see. There have been maybe we could do two. Let's do two more questions. So there were a couple questions on the midheaven and then a couple questions on the 12th house. So what do you think about South Node conjunct the midheaven, Rose, for someone that has Scorpio on the midheaven and South Node there?
Whoa. I mean, that's about power. That's about what you're seeking and your relationship to it, I think. And how you want to use that. And are you putting energy out into the world that is depleting to you, like as a me in here, you know, right? Because your North Node then is on your nadir. And so there is a real need for you to like nurture the things, the practices, the places that sustain you and that like anchor you and keep you rooted. And I just wonder, how much energy are you putting out there in the world, and how much of like what you value or what you seek or what you identify with success and power either is attached to a pre-existing power structure that maybe is not that awesome, or B is just like you're like building a skyscraper with no foundation. Like, is that what's happening for you? Maybe it's not, but I think that could be a possibility.
I got that notice that we only have another minute and 20 seconds remaining.
Yeah.
So maybe this will be the last question actually, but I will say that Jessica Lanyadoo has a great episode on the 12th house. For those of you that follow her podcast, Ghost of a Podcast, you should check it out for 12th house stuff. And Jason Hawley is a psychological astrologer, also has a really great talk on the 12th house that I think he gave at NORWAC, and you might be able to access. And then my quick 2 cents on the Scorpio midheaven. Someone else had a question about Taurus on the midheaven, but Scorpio Taurus axis, and especially the nodes coming back there, I'm really curious about how y'all are connecting with power and embodied power and relating your power to natural processes of earth and time, of reciprocity and relationship. And where is there potential for you to really like feel your own power as synonymous and congruent with the like regenerative power of life on earth?
Yeah.
We have 10 seconds. Thanks so much for joining me here, Rose.
Thank you so much for having me.
We'll post these recordings. I'll post them, and